Welcome to Hopetales. Today's story begins like any normal flight and ends with a miracle no one expected. The flight was supposed to be ordinary. Nothing special. Just another journey across the sky. Another group of strangers, sharing the same metal tube for a few hours before going back to their separate lives. The plane lifted off smoothly, climbing into the clouds as passengers settled into their seats. Seatbelts clicked open. Some people slept. Some scrolled through their phones. Others stared out the window, watching the ground disappear beneath them. No one knew that in less than an hour, every single person on board would believe they were about to die. At cruising altitude, everything still felt normal. The cabin lights were dim. The engines hummed steadily. The sky outside was calm and endless. Then something changed. It started subtly, so subtle that most passengers didn't even notice at first. A slight vibration. Not turbulence. Something different. Something deeper. The plane shuddered once. Then again, a few heads lifted. A few eyes widened. People instinctively looked toward the aisle, toward the front, toward anything that might explain what they were feeling. The seatbelt sign flickered on. That was the first warning. Moments later, the engines changed their tone. The steady hum dropped into something uneven, the kind of sound that didn't belong at 35,000 feet. Flight attendants froze for half a second before moving quickly, checking rows, securing carts, forcing calm onto their faces. Passengers began to sense it. This wasn't normal. Phones came out, not to scroll but to check maps, altitudes, flight paths. Some people whispered. Some prayed silently. Some clutched the armrests so tightly their knuckles turned white. The plane jolted harder now. A sudden drop sent stomachs floating. Oxygen masks trembled above the seats but didn't fall, yet, inside the cockpit. The situation was unfolding faster than anyone in the cabin could imagine. Systems were flashing warnings. Readings didn't make sense. One moment everything was stable, the next it wasn't. Altitude began to slip, slowly at first, then faster. The aircraft wasn't climbing anymore. It was descending. Passengers felt it in their bodies before they understood it in their minds. The subtle pressure change, the unnatural angle, the way gravity felt just slightly wrong. A child started crying. Someone screamed. The captain's voice came over the speakers, calm but strained, telling everyone to remain seated and keep their seatbelts fastened. That calm voice was the only thing holding panic back. For now. Minutes passed. Long, terrifying minutes. The descent continued. The engines fought, then weakened again. The plane shuddered violently as air rushed past it at the wrong angle. The seatbelt sign stayed on. Then the oxygen masks dropped. That was the moment everything changed. The cabin erupted into chaos. Masks fell like white flowers from the ceiling. Passengers fumbled to pull them down, to place them over faces shaking with fear. Instructions echoed, but many couldn't hear them over the pounding of their own hearts. Some people cried openly now. Others stared ahead in shock. Some reached for the hands of strangers, gripping them as if human touch could anchor them to life. The plane was losing altitude fast. Phones buzzed as last messages were typed. Apologies, confessions, goodbyes, words meant for people far away, written with trembling fingers and broken sentences. Flight attendants moved through the aisle, helping where they could, but their eyes betrayed them. They knew how bad this was. They had trained for emergencies. But this felt different. The aircraft shook violently, as if the sky itself was trying to tear it apart. Loose items clattered. Overhead bins rattled. The sound of wind screamed against the fuselage. Then came the announcement no one ever wants to hear. The captain spoke again, voice quieter this time. Slower, carefully measured. The words weren't dramatic. They didn't need to be. He explained that the plane was experiencing a critical failure, that they were attempting emergency procedures, that everyone should prepare for impact. Prepare for impact. Those three words drained the color from every face on board. Brace positions were demonstrated. Heads lowered. Arms crossed. People leaned forward, pressing their bodies into positions. Designed for survival, if survival was still possible. Some passengers closed their eyes. Others stared straight ahead, refusing to look away. Time slowed down. Seconds stretched into eternities. The ground was getting closer. Every vibration felt louder now. Every sound sharper. The air inside the cabin felt heavy, thick with fear and unspoken realization. This might be it. And then something unexpected happened. Near the middle of the cabin sat a passenger who hadn't moved much since the chaos began. Not frozen in fear, not frantic, just observant. While others panicked, this passenger noticed details others missed. The rhythm of the engines, the timing of the shutters, the way the plane responded when the pilots adjusted something. This person had spent years around aircraft, not as a pilot, not as a celebrity, just someone whose life had quietly revolved around machines, systems, and failures. Someone who understood how things broke and how they could sometimes be saved. As the plane shook again, this passenger realized something terrifying, but hopeful. The aircraft wasn't completely lost. Not yet. The problem wasn't total engine failure. It was asymmetry, a cascading issue, something that could still be stabilized if the right action was taken quickly. But the pilots were overloaded. Alarms screamed. Data flooded in faster than human minds could process. Under pressure like this, even the best training could be buried under noise. The passenger made a decision that felt impossible. They unbuckled. Flight attendants shouted. Gestures were made to sit down. But the passenger pressed forward, gripping seat backs, fighting the pull of gravity as the plane angled downward. Every step felt like walking uphill in a storm. Reaching the front of the cabin, the passenger signaled urgently, not with words, but with movements, with pointed gestures, with something raw and desperate. Inside the cockpit, the pilots turned. For a split second, irritation flashed across their faces. Then confusion, then recognition. The passenger didn't speak calmly. There was no time. There was only urgency, clear, focused urgency. Hands moved. Controls were indicated. Systems were pointed out. A suggestion, dangerous, unconventional, but logical. The cockpit fell silent except for alarms. Then one pilot hesitated. The other nodded. They tried it. A switch was thrown. A system was isolated. Power rerouted. The plane responded, not dramatically, not miraculously, but enough. Enough to matter. The descent slowed, just slightly. The angle adjusted. Inside the cabin, passengers felt it immediately. The violent shaking eased just a little. The scream of air softened into a roar that felt survivable. Hope crept in quietly. No announcements were made, no promises given. But the plane was no longer diving. It was flying. Barely, but flying. The pilots worked furiously now, guided by the new configuration. Instruments stabilized one by one. Altitude loss slowed further. Control returned in fragile fragments. Below them, land appeared. A runway. Not ideal, not long, not prepared, but real. The captain's voice returned, stronger now. Instructions were given again. Brace positions repeated. This time, the tone was different. This time, there was belief behind it. The aircraft lined up for landing at an angle no passenger would ever forget. Wheels touched ground harder than normal. Sparks flew. The cabin screamed as metal protested against physics. The plane skidded, bounced, then slowed. Finally, after what felt like forever, it stopped. Silence. A moment passed where no one moved. No one breathed. Then someone sobbed. Then another. Then the entire cabin erupted, not in screams, but in tears. Prayers, laughter, disbelief. They were alive. Emergency crews flooded the runway. Doors opened. Slides deployed. Passengers evacuated, some collapsing onto the ground. Others looking back at the aircraft that nearly became their grave. The passenger who stepped forward disappeared into the crowd, unnoticed by most. No applause. No spotlight. Just a quiet miracle. Later, investigators would explain how close the flight came to disaster, how seconds mattered, how one unconventional decision changed everything. But for those on board, the explanation didn't matter. They had prepared for impact. They had accepted the end. And then, against all odds, a miracle happened. Because sometimes hope doesn't arrive loudly. Sometimes it walks forward when everyone else is bracing for the end.